Hi, my name is John Light, and I've spent over 20 years working throughout all corners of the recruiting world. Our podcast, Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool, is a resource to help you stay afloat and get ahead of your competition. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. I'm your host, John Light, president of Sabretooth Recruiting, and today our guest is Ole Gjerde. Did I get it right this time?
That is spot on. That's impressive.
Well, Ole, you are the CEO of True North Dynamics, and if I didn't know better, if we hadn't spoken before, I'd be sitting back thinking, man, that's a really cool name. I wonder how he came up with a name like True North Dynamics. But the fact is, you deal a lot with Microsoft Dynamics, and at the time you lived in North Dakota, right? So you don't get a whole lot further north in the country. But thanks for carving out some time and joining us today. And if you could, as we get started, I'd really love to get some more background, both on how you arrived where you're at today with True North, and where you see things going here in the future, especially with technology, machine learning, AI coming out in the market. And I just spoke to someone not long ago about augmented reality. I mean, there's just technology flying around everywhere, and you almost have to duck and cover before it hits you over the head.
Yeah, well, that's at least two loaded questions right there. So a little bit the background. I'll try to keep it pretty high level and short. So I actually grew up in Norway. Came originally to the United States to go to college for computer science. I was a super nerdy, geeky. I was insanely introverted, didn't want to talk to anyone. I just wanted to do computer stuff. That was my vision. Did not realize that computer science is really just math. And I didn't really like math, so that was maybe not a good decision. But back in the late 90s, I started a technology service company, help desk, servers, networking with a couple of friends of mine. We grew that for a few years. We merged with another company. That was a really bad idea. So we got our first experience of mergers and how culture really impacts decisions like that. We started a new company that was a pure play MSP, so think fixed fee technology services. Grew that for 6 years. We're doing about $3 million at the time. We acquired one of our clients that was a Microsoft Dynamics consultancy, thinking we're going to build this infrastructure technology company with business applications and unified help desk, and it's going to be magical and amazing. And with all the best plans, that did not work. They didn't really belong together. Cultures are different. It's not good or bad. There's two different kinds of cultures. So I got my second experience of culture and how talent and people and how different they are and different groups of people. You got to be really careful when you try to integrate those things. But then in the COVID hit, I was living in North Dakota at the time. That's where I went to college and figured out, we can work from home. Why do we live in North Dakota? No offense to North Dakota, but it's extremely cold. And so I moved to Colorado. And then I took over, we split the two companies because we realized the IT services and Dynamics consulting did not belong together. So we split them back out, and I work really well with the consultant group, and so my other business partner stayed with the MSP. I went with the consultant group, and we created True North Dynamics. And you mentioned the name, so it is interesting. You think it had some kind of True North Dakota, northern or what I call South Canada, but when we split the companies, we worked with a branding company out of California, and we said, help us come with the name. We need branding and all this kind of stuff. And said, we just really don't want a connection to True IT which is the MSP, because we wanted to truly feel like they got separated and became True North Dynamics, which is highly connected with True IT. But it's been great, and it's been a good name because it really fits into kind of our mission of guiding people, more specifically organizations and businesses, with their applications to run their business. So in the end, the marketing and branding actually worked out great. It's just kind of funny how it came about.
Well, I mean, to me, it'd be like a no-brainer out there in North Dakota. Or True North. They're heading that way, and by the way, they work in dynamics a lot. So, but hey, it makes sense. And the fact is, too, you handle an interesting transition from an MSP to a services company effectively. And, I'm a firm believer. When I look at tech and IT, I see two different spaces, but with a lot of overlap. And let's face it, tech, as we see it today, doesn't exist without the infrastructure and support we have from IT. And so there's not only this integral relationship, but when you look at the size and scope of companies, and as you get into large companies, they're going to have a CIO and some sort of a CTO, or chief product officer, even, that is not really about anything to do internally. It's all about what they can push outward to their customers, into the marketplace. And you sit back and you think about this, you get to smaller companies, it's almost like you got to make a decision. You're going to have a VP of IT or a CIO. That person's going to double down as your CTO unless, you're building a specific technology. And it's interesting to me to look around and think about the very dynamic changes taking place in business applications. When you start talking about ERPs, like Dynamics, you could probably name a dozen others off the top of our heads, right? I'm curious to find out what you see the future looking like when you start considering machine learning and generative AI and such as it impacts business applications, and how much that's going to change and impact how work looks for people 5 years down the road, as an example.
It is a very interesting arena. So the ERP and kind of business applications consulting companies tend to be relatively old school. And so it's kind of that hours for dollars.
Mm-hmm.
If you need us, call us, we'll help you. Consulting companies makes a lot of money doing that. And, the incentive is actually kind of backwards, because it's actually a bad incentive for the client, because, the more you need and the more issues you have or whatever, the more money you make.
Right.
Now, the new tools are coming out. I mean, I realize AI is the current one. Throughout time, there's always the current kind of cool thing. Sometimes it becomes a thing. Even back when the internet first came out, it was like, the internet's not going to turn into anything. Well, here we are. It's everything at this point.
Yeah.
For better or worse. So for me, these things are really just tools. And most companies, and you mentioned, the kind of difference between the bigger and the smaller companies. Bigger companies have the internal direction, leadership, wherewithal to be able to look at and do something with some of those things. But the SMB market, even into the smaller mid-market, they're not going to do that. They need somebody else to help them figure out what to do with this kind of stuff. So the question is,
Right.
What do you do with something like machine learning and AI? Well, in a sense, to me, they're just tools. They're not going to magically replace all humans, because if you talk to ChatGPT, it's really cool. It's super useful, but it also gives you some super interesting answers.
Interesting.
And while I do think
is that a euphemism you're throwing out there? Interesting.
It may be, it's fascinating, for sure. And so, for me, it's, how do we help companies use these kind of tools? Because they are useful. If you look at, Microsoft, just, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, released, Microsoft Copilot for organizations for below 300, users. And it's really cool. It's really helpful. It gives you the way for you to ask Outlook, how is my email? Is it defensive? Is it angry? Very useful, because we all sometimes write those emails and we're like, yeah, okay, maybe I shouldn't send that. So to me, that's kind of where you take these things and make them useful. So in business applications, kind of the same thing. Helping you write descriptions, helping you write emails, helping you automate things inside of your CRMs. If you think from a salesperson standpoint, salespeople typically hate doing the paperwork side, creating leads, creating opportunities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to use those tools to make their life easier. I don't see that it's going to massively take over people's jobs, at least in the near future. In 5 years, it's going to be pretty interesting, because OpenAI just came out with ChatGPT like a year ago, and it's already pretty amazing in the 1 year since the first version came out.
Yeah.
In 5 years, it could be kind of crazy. But day to day for most people, I don't know that it's going to have that much impact because it is kind of one of these huge things that you don't know what to do with. So for us as an organization, we're just looking for ways. How do we take some of the pieces that are helpful and help train and coach our clients on how to use some of those things?
Right.
But it's definitely going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. And I know SAP is throwing hundreds of millions of dollars into AI technology. And I've wondered in the back of my mind, well, at some point, a year from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is, I need a new ERP or I need, to migrate or upgrade or whatever, that they're just basically going to drop a code into a website and get out of the way. And AI is going to bring the core in and just unpack it and categorize everything, set your processes up, and you really don't have to do anything. It's like a cartoon where they throw this box down and you add water or whatever, and it just starts plopping up. Here's your AP, here's your AR, here's your CRM, here's your this and that, and boom. And the next thing you know, hey, here's your chart of accounts. And it's done quite well for your industry sector because everything's in its one little package. And I think about all the people it takes today to implement an ERP cleanly and the work that goes into it. And I kind of sit back and go, man, how is that going to change work? Because if you can do it with an ERP, what else can you do something similar for? And, I agree with you, like Copilot and Bard's coming out. And you got all this other stuff where, by the time this podcast is heard, it'll probably be, people think it's old hat, right? But, it's still into the foreseeable future. AI still needs its handheld in a sense. I mean, it can go attack and do work and produce a document that's 80% of what you want, but you're still going to have to train it, develop it, oversee it, edit it. And I interviewed a CHRO of Harvard Business Review last year, and prepping for it, I was reading some articles, and I found this really interesting article where the author posited that we're moving from this creator economy to this editor economy. And at the time, it struck me as really profound, really salient, made a lot of sense. And I still think the same, but I also think the more I've been exposed to it and potential applications of new technology, that we're still in maybe not a creator economy, but an innovator economy where the tools of innovation to make something creative into reality, to ideate and turn it into something tangible. I think we're maybe getting closer than ever in human history.
100%. So I think the interesting part is that we're actually, I think, further down this road than probably most people realize. Because if you think about business applications and what companies like ours have done over time, it used to be servers and SQL and installing software. So it's more of a technical kind of job. You have to understand technology and SQL, how to create, connection, TCP/IP, all that kind of stuff. Well, already today, it's into more of that editor piece. We're using things like Power Applications, Power Apps, and Power Platform to build these easy things. So it's the no-code, low-code kind of stuff. And so I think we're already a long way down that road. Now, I think AI is going to make it easier to do that quicker. But I think it's actually a good thing. So companies like ours has to change with the times. Because the kinds of people you're going to need are going to change. Like I said, it used to be, even 10 years ago, you had a lot of technical people on staff. It's not that we don't need any of those, but we need a lot less than we used to because we don't touch SQL. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. Now it's like what I call like partially technical. You still have to be kind of a logical brain and how you think about these kinds of things. But what AI is going to really do is be able to describe to it what you want, and it will be able to provide you a pretty darn good proof of concept. So one of the really amazing things, and I think I'm excited about it, is people can actually describe what they want, and they get something they can kind of see and touch and try and get a feel for what it's going to be. I still think you're going to need, at least for the foreseeable future, need humans to make it amazing and put those finishing touches. But how powerful is it going to be when the technology can get you 80% there, and then you just have to do those final pieces? So for us, it's changing our business to, we're going to build this stuff from scratch, to we're going to take what's already there and fit it to your business. So even though in some ways we'll actually make less money, if you think like per project, for me, this is actually a true win-win, because we can still make money. It's just different, and it's more affordable for clients. So one of my missions is, how do we make things like business applications more affordable for smaller businesses? Because you mentioned SAP. Well, that's really enterprise level. But what about the larger small business that are outgrowing things like QuickBooks and maybe HubSpot and that kind of stuff, that need that next level? There really isn't much options right now. There's some line of business, for dentists, there's dentist specific software.
Right.
But I do think Dynamics being essentially a platform Microsoft has done an amazing job to position themselves as, you can use this and build anything you want. And that includes web, that includes mobile phones and all that kind of stuff. So I really think the future actually just makes this stuff easier. It's going to require people to change how they look at business and how they look at making money. And there's going to be some interesting struggles in the future, because that's a hard change. With my background of MSP and fixed fee technology services, that's just where I came from. That's what I'm used to. So then taking over the consulting business, I'm like, why are we still doing all this hour stuff? We really need to figure out how to package and productize and make this stuff easier for people and more affordable, because it should be out there for more people. It does mean that we're hiring very different people than we would have even 10 years ago. But I love that kind of change, and it makes makes day-to-day way more interesting to me, at least.
Well, and you want to make sure you put your money on the right bet. Right.
Well, yeah. And how do you know that? You never know.
or at least you gotta be able to recognize, I think, okay, we're all wanting to shift gears in a hurry. And you know what that creates, though, is when you do it from a people perspective, because we live at the intersection of talent and technology. But from a people perspective, that can be extremely disruptive. And it's not to say that you don't need a particular set of skills. It is to say that, wow, maybe it's not the right time to apply it, or I don't need as much. And I think that's one of you look around the market today, that's one of the dynamics we see playing out, is that companies are scratching their head and, do I really need X, Y, or Z? And so I was doing some research just this morning, as a matter of fact, where the study showed that jobs in the last 8 years have drifted about 25% from what they were to something different. And they're projecting another 65% drift between now and 2030. And I kind of sit back and I read that and I'm going, oh dear. In fact, it was related to a LinkedIn article that was discussing the top 25 job titles in 2024, what they're projected to be. And AI developer is going to be on there. Well, AI consultant was number 8, I think. And number 10 was AI engineer. Do you know what number 9 is? Number 9 is a recruiter. And I'm sitting there reading this going, everywhere you look, you see layoffs, and corporate recruiters are getting cut constantly. And it occurred to me, and it's a thought that's been in my head for a while, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, that as certain human in the loop activities, such as recruiting, are at risk for commoditization, further commoditization. As that's happening, the premium value of finding, attracting, acquiring the talent companies need to deal with a dynamically changing strategy as a result of the impact of technology, I think the premium for high quality recruiters and talent attraction and acquisition should actually be much, much higher. It shouldn't be getting commoditized because it's hard. And especially when you consider companies at this time, because they're having turmoil in their workforce, because things are changing, talent retention is difficult, which makes talent management hard. And if those aren't firing on all cylinders, talent acquisition gets exponentially harder. And so I wonder, your experience with True North and the changes you're seeing, and maybe even what you see out of the marketplace, what are your thoughts on that entire dynamic? Not just relates to recruiters, but anything that people think, hey, I can use technology and make this dirt cheap and commoditize it, when in fact it ought to be and will probably be at a premium if you want to be competitive with your in your market space.
Yeah, I mean, even with all this technology, it still comes down to people. Maybe one day, 100 years from now, it'll be different. I don't know, but at this point, having amazing people is easily the most important thing. Now, what does that mean? It used to mean you needed amazing technical people. You needed the people that were they knew it inside out and that kind of stuff.
Right.
What it's shifting to is you need people that understands not only business, but also understands people. And I would actually agree. Recruiting at this point, any corporation that lays off recruiters, to me, would be that. I mean, that's insane. It's going to be just that much more important because the skill sets you look for are different. There's not that many people in the market that already knows this stuff. So now you got to figure out, okay, so how do you find the right people that have the right skill sets to be able to learn the right things to do that kind of stuff. So it is an issue that we run into, because if you look at like Power Platform, which is the kind of platform side of Dynamics, there really isn't, or hasn't been that many people out there that knows this stuff. So for us, we're doing a lot more internal training and that kind of stuff, because we just don't go and find the people. But then the recruiting is actually changing from how do we go and find the best developer to we need to go find the best person that can be the best developer that we need. And for me, that's a kind of different kind of recruiting, because now you can't just look at a resume and say, well, they know C# and they know this technology and that technology. So having those great recruiters that knows how to kind of understand people and what to look for, to me, is way more important.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that for obvious reasons. But B, I would suggest too, with things changing the way they are, I think it's super critical for talent acquisition, just to do business in general. You need to know yourself first. And by that, I'm talking about the organization. You understand your culture and your environment. I was talking to someone the other day, and there was a particular verse in the Bible that popped into my head. And it was about that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pitchers or bowls of silver. And you have this image in your head of something that's right in its place and its time and its context, versus, putting a gold ring in a pig's snout. Pig doesn't care. It's just going to get muck and mire all over it. But a word in the right context, doing the right thing that it was intended to do, encouraging, edifying, whatever, is a big deal. Conversely, if that apple of gold was an apple of lead, it wouldn't be as impressive even in the bowl of silver, no matter how pretty that is. If the apple was gold and the bowl was made out of pick whatever else, it's still not going to be that, the right appropriate context. And I think when you develop job descriptions and you think about what does my ideal candidate look like, you need to understand what your situation is first, because fitting them into that context and that setting is every bit as important as them bringing the right skills to the table. And one thing I haven't seen changing in the market is companies blowing that off to pursue a skill set or an experience set or years of experience or a name brand school or whatever it might be. And so when you say, hey, who's the right person, we can develop this other aspect of their skills. I really I admire that a leader has the mindset that we could potentially do that and make that investment for someone we believe in.
Yeah. Right or wrong is interesting. So I'm not saying the way I look at it is necessarily right, because I do think it's right for us. So my philosophy is we want to find great, smart people that wants to do something, right? I mean, ultimately, the want to do great things is hard to train in somebody. So for example, even though we are a technology company, several of our sales team actually have come from other industries. Three of them actually came from the brewery industry in Colorado. So he's like, what does breweries have to do with
What's it have to do with
technology and this kind of
dynamics?
stuff?
Yeah.
Well, so a big part of it is customer service. Think about a brewery. You deal with people that are drinking, and so you know how to work with people and that kind of stuff. If you're in sales, what is sales? Working with people. Now, you do need the ability to learn the product at least at a high level, but it's more important that you know how to work with humans. And I'm not necessarily talking about selling to people, because for me, selling isn't about selling to people. It's about understanding what the client is needing, what problems are they trying to solve, and then how we can solve them. They don't need to know all the stuff. They know how to bring in the right people to have those conversations. So for us, we try to think a little bit out of the box of, where do we find the right kinds of people? Because there just aren't that many people in the marketplace that does what we're exactly looking for. Well, let's not overly worry about that. Now, I think the opposite isn't true. You can't just hire completely inexperienced people. Now you create some internal problems and that kind of stuff. But it's something that I feel really strongly is I just want great people. And more importantly, I want smarter people than me, because I'm not the smartest person. So I want to make sure everybody we hire is way smarter than me, so we can go and do cool stuff. And obviously, more importantly, let them do their thing. I don't have all the answers, so let's bring them in. Let's collaborate, work together. Now, it is there are some challenges for us. We're a fully remote company. We have people in 12 states now, I believe.
Wow. Okay.
So, humans are being humans. You never see each other and that kind of stuff. How do you create trust? How do you create camaraderie? How do you create this
That's
common,
a big question.
Team piece? So that's one of the things we're working on in 2024 is how do we do more of that? Because as much as technology is awesome and we love technology, there is no substitute for the human connection. The togetherness, breaking bread together, going out to eat, doing some fun activities together. There is no substitute for that. I don't miss being in an office. I do miss being with the people, because it does make certain things easier. So now the question is, how do we solve some of those problems?
Well, that's a huge question, because more and more companies are trying to return to the office and all this other stuff. And I wonder how much of that is tied to the fact that, hey, we've got a lease or we own this building, and you know what? We're going to use it no matter what. But also, wonder how much of it is we're very collaborative and innovative when working together and exchanging ideas and seeing each other face to face. It's hard to do virtually.
It is.
But at the same time, and I don't mean to offend any salespeople out there or any delivery people, how innovative do you need to be? How many new techniques or new ways do you need to bubble up to the surface and say, wow, this is a novel way to do X, when the fact is you can do most of your learning on how to sell or how to do this or do that by taking a class or reading a book or listening to a fantastic podcast like Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. But I kind of sit back and think, when I look at technology, it feels to me like we're turning that corner and entering into the space that allows us to do things we couldn't have done before in a way that we've envisioned, but there's a lot of fearfulness now that we're going through the process of embracing it. It is a process, because it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of broken eggs. There's going to be a lot of broken toys. The real question is, do we have the leadership in the right places to be the voices of sanity, the points of light out in this room, this new space, to to help guide people to the right conclusion. And I like something you said a lot earlier about, I don't know that this really changes the fact that people are needed in their current jobs for, however many years longer. But yeah, at some point it is going to shift it. I think when we all move into that space around the corner, and it's common, but it's still not common yet. It's just, it's still a novelty as far as generative AI goes. Let me ask you this. When you look at True North and you look at the work that you all are doing, and we know things are changing, and it sounds like you've got some innovative ideas on how to address those changes from a service perspective, delivery perspective. I'm curious to find out how you see things developing in the next 3 years from the perspective of, will companies like yours still be very much we're a per hour sort of thing, or will they take more of a flat fee approach, or what's the dynamic gonna do in terms of impact to how you deliver service to a customer?
That is a great question. If I have anything to do with it, it will be a lot more fixed fee services. I think the billable hours consulting kind of thing is, like I said, it's a backwards incentive, and I don't think it's the right way to do it. I think there's a better way. That doesn't mean there aren't an element of that, but
Right.
So our vision as a company is to change to more productized, so we can package pieces that most people are going to need. And then on top of that, you can have all these add-ons that, if you want expense tracking, or you want to use, you want to use fixed assets in your accounting software. You want to use, obviously leads and opportunities in sales, but they can do a lot more than that. But you can do all these add-ons, but it's really just a starting point, because tools, nobody should buy tools and just kind of like use them and forever and see what happens. Every business is a little bit unique. So you got to take the tools, and then once you get to know the tools and you get used to it, then you should look at, okay, how do we tweak this to actually fit the business and really work for us? The technology is going to really help that. So ultimately, I think AI is going to give people, give the power to the people, if you will. It's like democratizing technology, because technology should be easy. Because what's the purpose of technology? Well, it's to make things better,
easier.
right?
Yeah.
Easier, better, more efficient, and that kind of stuff. So let's figure out how to do that. So we see kind of our mission like to do that in a more affordable way, because right now you can have all this stuff, but it's extremely expensive because it's all time materials, and then it adds up because it's difficult, it's new. So how do we start packaging these things to make it more affordable to smaller companies, so they can use some of this stuff? And I think this is it's going to be a really good change. How is that going to affect the industry? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of legacy stuff in this industry. If you think about, legacy ERPs that's been around for 30 years, those aren't going to go away. And there's going to be a large set of people that's going to struggle with this, because if you think about somebody, an accountant that's worked in one software for 30 years, that's a really hard change, and that's super understandable. So how do we make it easier for those people to learn something new? So one of our pieces is always, everything we do should include training to make sure that people know how to use this stuff. Because what's the point of software if you don't know how to use it?
Yeah.
And I think all of that stuff can be fixed fee. There's no reason you can't package these things in a way so people know what they're going to spend. So it's not a blank check and make tons of money. Again, my philosophy is, we have to make money, but let's make money across lots of clients, rather than making, having to make sure we make tons of money.
Than having a whale,
client.
that does 80% of your revs or whatnot.
Yep.
I like your idea too of democratizing technology in a way that it's consumable and usable at a reasonable cost point to the little folks. Look, Sabretooth right now, class, we're little folks, and we can have a big impact. We engage in things that impact the success of a lot of companies, but we're still little, and SAP's out of our reach. Obviously, we work in QuickBooks like a lot of other small companies. But I do think there is this demarcation that's happening in here, that you've got your LLMs from these big players that have invested horrific amounts of resources into them, and thank you. But then you have this opportunity to get to specific applications of technology, and I think there's the potential wave of entrepreneurialism that's starting to bubble up and surface around the market is going to be historic in a way that I think we haven't seen before because of this, because it doesn't cost as much. That barrier to entry is lowering, which you sit back and go, well, that makes my whatever you build less valuable. Maybe not. But if you put yourself into it and it reflects you and it reflects a philosophy and a set of ideals and a way of doing business that is a differentiator and unique, that in and of itself, I think in the future is going to function as something of a moat. But I got a hunch we could probably talk about this for a while. And I know you're fully caffeinated. Ole, I'm fully caffeinated. Yeah, well, I've got shameless plug for a Texas company here.
Ooh, they're opening one in Colorado. In a month or so.
Go. Cleanest bathrooms in the industry. And just fantastic. But let's talk for a second about you personally. What would you describe as your passion project? And I mean, it can be work, it can be a charitable thing, it can be a sport, it can be whatever. But I always ask people, what is it that, when you don't have the background behind you and you are driving True North Dynamics forward, what's your passion project?
I don't know. And I know it's a weird answer. Right now, True North is my passion product. So I'll expand that question a little bit for me personally. So my background is nerdy, geeky, super introverted computer guy. And if you would have asked me even 10 years ago, would I be talking to people, going to conferences, networking? I would have been like, you are insane. I would never, ever do that in my life. And yet here I am. And that's an interesting change. I don't know. I like to focus on kind of one thing, because I have a family, so we do stuff together and that kind of stuff. But ultimately for me, this is my passion. I see an opportunity in the market to help make a difference, make this stuff more affordable, more democratized, to use a fancy term and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I love what I do. I would not have predicted this. I've been running a business for 25 years. 23 years of those, I was not the CEO. I was either the COO or some form of second in command. I never saw myself as having any interest in leading an organization. I was just like, nope, I just want to be the background. I just want to do the work. But now it's like, no, like there is something to this. Like we can make a difference. We can actually change this stuff. And will we? I don't know. I mean, obviously all we can do is do the best we can and push and drive. But this is truly my passion project, which I know for some people it's like, oh, that's, sounds really boring. No, it's actually awesome. The crazy change from kind of the old school business to new school people, changing the business, being profitable while you're investing in productization. I mean, these are all interesting challenges that are really difficult. And then changing to a remote company. I mean, I was in an office for 23 years. So now how do we take on this challenge of being a remote company? How do we create the human connection when we do this stuff? When we productize our products, how do we keep that human connection with the clients? Because I don't want to be the nameless, Google where you never see a person. Right. So, what is my next one? I don't know. I didn't predict this one, so I guess we'll have to connect in 5 years. Too early
to take a stab at the next one, right?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I love doing a lot of things that a lot of people do is travel and that kind of stuff. Just this week, I went to my first city council meeting ever in my life. I've never been involved with civics or politics or anything. And it was awesome. And I may be super weird, but it was all boring stuff. And I'm like, this process is really interesting. So maybe it's some kind of local politics or something. I don't know.
You strike me as someone who's got a disposition towards continuous learning and things that interest you. You kind of geek out on it, which is great. But had you told me earlier on, I was introverted, kind of nerdy guy, I would have been like, okay, on the second part, but the first part, I mean, you've busted through the introversion barrier, at least, here. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we're evolving with things along the way. So,
well, I mean, isn't that the human thing? No, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I think we all resist it, right? I mean, it's uncomfortable to change and all this kind of stuff, but I've just embraced it. Maybe this comes with age and I kind of figure out life, but it's, I love a challenge. I get really bored with stuff, so I need to always have something new. So for me, if this ever gets bored, I probably do need to come up with something else. But I'm probably one of those people that will never retire, because what would I do? Like, I don't want to go sit on the beach. I like going to the beach, and then I
just don't like staying at the beach for a long time. Yeah, no, I hear you. Hey, Ole, I want to say thank you for taking the time to join us and to share so much. I'm afraid we could keep going and for a long time, and that might not bode well for my family life or yours. But I want to say thank you again, and I would suggest anybody who has an interest in any of the topics we've talked about. I know they can find me, and I'm sure they can find you just like I did on LinkedIn, looking up Ole Gjerde. And thanks again, man. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. And this stuff is exciting. On my LinkedIn is my calendar link, which maybe shouldn't say this.
No, so, please go.
I love talking business. I love talking philosophy. So, anytime. I appreciate you having me on.
Better be careful. I might take you up on that invitation too often.
Sounds good to me.
You've been listening to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. This podcast is sponsored by Sabretooth. Sabretooth improves the quality of hire and speeds up the time to fill specialized machine learning, data engineering, data science, and developer roles, stretching tech recruiting budgets further by bringing the precision of retained search and the speed of contingent search to the market in one complete solution. Find out more at sbr2th.com and follow me, John Light, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.